probably the most competitive Senate race, no? If all of the
Yes.
people we think are gonna run, right? I mean, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's so tight.
Yeah, it's very tight, and we
Yeah.
feel that last four slots are the only ones being relatively open, no? And you'll notice when you look at as you go down the list, that the gaps between candidates are much smaller, no?
Very competitive.
From 10 to 15, no? So from rank 10 to 15, or yeah, it's very competitive.
Yeah.
And I think the magic number for us is something above 30%. No? Anybody above 30% has a very good chance of getting in the top 12. So
Yeah,
this is going to
that looks
be
like
an
the threshold,
extremely
no?
competitive rate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that looks like it. But 20% puts you within the competitive range, and 30% more or less puts you almost in a shoe-in range, right?
Yeah, assured of a spot. You see, the vulnerables are those ranked 8 and below. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be very
Which
competitive.
includes Amy Marcos, no?
Yes, for the first time.
Which
For
is
the first time.
quite a shock, no? It's a shocker
Yeah.
considering,
Actually, it's a shocker for us because she's not a client, by the way.
yeah.
We've been measuring her numbers really as a proxy also for the administration, no? And it's gone down, and her numbers have gone down. And to some extent, although we haven't reported the numbers for the administration yet, we're still going over them second time. There's a slight decline on
But
major
Amy
issues.
is opposition in a way, right? Isn't
Yeah,
she
I
like
know. Maybe that's part of the problem also. Nobody knows where she
it's more
actually.
opposition? I mean,
Yeah,
let's be honest about it. Yeah.
yeah. She's maybe that erosion, no, that noise and
Yeah.
the confusion on which side she is supposed to be
I
part of.
find it also interesting, Professor Rai, the fact that Isco and Willie Ong are almost the same. No, I mean it's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
close.
yeah.
Considering how far they were back in the day. One was presidential, na competitive at some point. One was like a vice presidential that people were not sure about. And mukhang, eto, baka mag third time lucky na si Willie Ong, no? Just like
Yeah,
Rizon
that's
and
very
Pia.
possible, Richard.
Yeah,
That's very
mukhang eto
possible.
may chance na siya mag third time lucky, no?
Kasi for the last three quarters, he's been in the top 12.
Yeah, pasok siya eh.
And actually, very few occasions in the last few quarters that these numbers have really fluctuated. It's statistically stable, except that in this particular quarter, for the last two quarters, it's been statistically stable. But this third quarter, he went down slightly because you put in two big names, President Duterte and former President Duterte, and of course Ben Tulfo. It disrupted the list. So they ate into a lot of the support for the others. No?
So that's one big takeaway that once you introduce BNB, right? Ben and Baste, di ba? Ben and Baste. It kind
Yeah.
of scrambled the whole rankings and all of that, which tells you how volatile the situation is, including the top guy coming down to 58% from
18 points down. 18 points down.
from 70 plus percent. I mean, that's crazy. Mid 70s percent.
Yeah.
So okay, so one implication is if you're Erwin Tulfo, the biggest threat to you topping the Senate race, because you know it matters to be, is your own brother, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
And ang
it
marites
looks
sa
like,
akin,
yeah.
ang marites sa akin is yung pinakakuya nila ay napaisip bigla na, wait lang, baka kailangan ko rin tumakbo dyan kasi Mon Tulfo wasn't doing too bad in 2019 service, if I'm not mistaken. And he's the OG, right? So a
Yeah.
Tulfo run would be quite bad for Erwin, right? It could really split
Yeah.
the vote in ways that
So
happen.
the explosive part of this is TNT. Tulfo and Tulfo,
Of
so
course.
but they're on the opposite sides politically, you have to understand.
Oh yeah,
Ben Tulfo
definitely.
more leaning towards the Duterte side, and Erwin is very much no with the administration,
Which
and
is like
so
the Marcoses, right? One
yeah,
is admin, one is the other side. But
yeah.
man, but okay, I don't. Of course, I'm not sure if this was in the survey, but is there an when people express their preference, meron bang appreciation ng mga ganyan nuances, or it's more really the brand, the name, the name recall?
Well, we don't have the data yet for that. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully we're going to build a probe on that. again, we link preference with culture. No? Of course, it's a big debate in politics. No? But this is where we're coming from Okta, and that these preferences are built on identities, no, on cleavages, on perceptions about our political culture. No? And you'll see that in the next set of survey data that we're going to show you. But yes, brand is important, and you're seeing it. No, the Tulfo brand is alive and kicking, and still very competitive. You're also seeing it with the Duterte brand. All three
Yeah.
uh, possible candidates, I'm sure, we're not sure if any of them are actually going to run, are in the top 15. So this is brand name. Is important. And in this particular midterm elections, if this might look like the cast, no, it's going to be highly competitive because you're pitting, very established brands against each other. And then again, machinery will come in, your political network will come in. Of course, resources will come in, and so to go to the next part of our survey, you'll notice that it's also important if you're aligned with the administration at this
And yun
particular.
nga, I think that's a perfect segue. But before we segue to the next part, because that's where we can break down the alignments and affiliations and preferences, which is, I think, kudos to Okta for doing that, because I think that's the kind of surveys we want to also see more data on that, because we talk about DDS versus loyalists in a blogger sense of the word, but we really need the data. But for a moment, I understand that we want to talk about things based on as much possible as data we can get. But let's just say, despite the epistemological limitations, if I can put it, what is your sense with the rise of Tulfos? Because our understanding is that, well, I mean, Rafi Tulfo is also now the front runner to be the next president of the Philippines. Although, of course, in the Pulse Asia survey, at least from what we see, it's statistically tied. But his trajectory is just incredible, from teens to 30+% right now. And who knows, right? If Lenny doesn't run or someone else, probably numbers will go more to Tulfo than Sara, considering the opposition between Sara and Lenny Robredo, right? So this is really I mean, you're absolutely right. We can talk about the Dutertes shortly, but the thing with the Tulfos is, ang basa ko dito is, the surprise to me is how Dutertes made it to national politics ahead of Tulfos. Because if we recall it, 5-10 years ago, the Tulfos were already a national brand. It was just a matter of them making that leap, diba? They were already household names, and they already had that huge appeal to the masses as a kind of a savior of the people. Talagang top na top nila yan. So in a way, you could say this is a belated, right, harvest of that long-term building of their brand and the appeal that they enjoy among the, I mean, andyan that, diba? Macho, savior. I won't say vigilante justice, but let's just call it Tulfo justice. I interviewed Rafi Tulfo, so people can check the interview that I had with Rafi Tulfo on these issues. But so yun ang basa ko. I want to understand where you come from as a political scientist. Again, I understand because you're now in the survey agencies, you want to be a little bit circumspect about any kind of speculative analysis. But just overall,
It's okay. I agree with the common perceptions about the Tulfo brand. No, it's been evolving over time. The decision to run was only recent, and the decision to run was, by the way, linked also to the support of the Duterte family. No, to a great extent, they were associated very strongly with the Duterte brand also, and they share many commonalities. No, as far as that brand of leadership and governance is concerned. They come from the populist mode, no, and this, in an era or in a context where we have weak institutions, okay, a state that's characterized as weak on many fronts, you find space for these kinds of candidates and the kinds of advocacies and the leadership style that they promote. These tend to rise, no? Especially during hard times. Richard, you see a lot of populists rising up, no? And this particular context that we're in as a country is extremely hard for most of our countrymen. Nahihirapan ho yung ating kababayan. Nakikita rin namin sa surveys namin yan. Consistently over the last year, no? Ang talagang problema, number one, urgent national concern that people want to resolve, that what people want government to resolve, has always been the high prices of goods and services. Nahihirapan po sila. Their second is, of course, accessible food, and of course, higher wages. So yan, consistent yan. Na in times of hardship, populists find space, no? And I guess this is the kind of population that's very
I think the term we used is
Filipinos now. Yeah.
right. The term we use is what's that? Weak state, strong Tulfos, right?
Yeah. So,
Now,
but that's a problem, That's a struggle. Yeah, you use the weak state song society
yeah.
perspective, but that's one way of looking at. But the populist appeal is very strong with Filipinos. You have to also understand the Tulfos have a particular ethnic background. They're Bisaya. They have a strong support as far as that's concerned. When you look at
Although
their
their
numbers.
father is Ilocano, last time I checked.
Yes, I know, I
Ilocano
know.
daddy
But
nila, yes.
no.
From Batak pa
So,
nga yata eh. And then
yeah, so
Japanese yung mom nila, yeah.
yeah, and then they're also popular in they're a strong candidate in this particular sense. You
Right.
get votes everywhere. When you look at the Duterte, let's say, assuming there's a Sara, Rafi, competition in 2020, which is so far away, no? Rafi will be very competitive because he gets votes everywhere. North, South, Visaya. We have a probe. We just have to ask our the company that commissioned it if we can release the probe on Tulfo versus Sara. But in our probe, Tulfo has not lost to Sara Duterte 1-on-1. In fact, the gap is increasing.
Thank you
See,
for
the reality is we won't give the numbers because we
yeah,
have to.
exactly. No, I
But the
appreciate
reality is
that,
that's the basic.
Ranjit.
Yeah, the basic perspective is in Philippine elections, it's not just a two-way contest naman eh. You haven't seen a two-way contest, okay, in post-martial Philippines, except for the contest between Cory Aquino and President Marcos Sr. But after that, it's always been tandems, no? Multiple tandems competing against each other, and that's where Rafi Tulfo's weakness is. Okay, he has no baluarte. The Dutertes have consistent baluarte. Even now, despite all the attacks against them, they have a baluarte. Yes, you can say it's only located in one regional, I mean Mindanao, but you still have that. So in a three-way, four-way contest, Sara Duterte will always be competitive. You understand? So that's
a very good point.
Numbers.
Kaya nga sabi ko, of course, I understand that. I thank you so much, by the way, for at least confirming, because I've been saying for a while that not only in Pulse Asia, but we see in different surveys this upward trajectory of Rafi Tulfo. Obviously, that's where the second preference comes in, because it's very possible that a lot of those candidates there, particularly Leni, I doubt if she'll run in 2028, but of course things could change if she does well, let's say as a local official in 2025 onwards. So that's where things could get very interesting, right? But obviously, you're right. The other important factor, Dutertes and three Dutertes could potentially make it. I mean, that's next level, right? We have already magkapatid, mag-ina, right? The Villars, the Caetanos, but three brothers and three Dutertes would be something, right?
Yeah, this is a veto constituency already, no? Parang partido na sila, no? But we'll see if it will actually happen, things could change between now and October. And so para sa ating mga kababayan, nagbabago pa yung mga numero na to. At meron pang espasyo para sa mga progresibo, meron pang espasyo talaga para sa ating mga sa opposition. And of course, wala pa namang kampanya, although nagkakampanya na informally ang lahat. Mukhang pamilya ang malaking factor dito, no? Pangalan, pamilya, pera ang magiging malaking factor dito sa ating 2025 elections. It's going to be expensive, very competitive, and parang may alas yung ating administration. Okay, kasi marami silang resources, sila nakapwesto ngayon. So those associated with administration, when you look down the list, but the thing is, that's the big question. That's the other big question, Richard. Saan ba dyan yung administration? Hindi ba? Sino ba dyan yung kandidato ng administration? Di ba? Wala, parang wala kandidato yung administration primary.